Albert Breer is joining us. He, of course, is the Monday morning quarterback, so he's really important covering the NFL, joining us from Jets camp. Albert, thanks for joining us. Is all the media attention warranted with the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers?
Can I steal that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean, it is interesting how the organization here really attracts that, and the Cowboys have been that way forever, obviously, like where it's like almost just because it's the Cowboys, certain things become a circus. Like the CD Lamb thing in Dallas seems like it's like 5 times bigger than if it was anywhere else. You know what I mean? And the Jets seem to have, it's not the same, but a similar sort of effect as far as how like stories just get amplified here. Even like versus the Giants, like if some of the things that were happening with the Jets were happening with the Giants, I think a lot of us would like brush them off as no big deal, In reverse, like if Daniel Jones threw the interceptions that he threw this weekend as a New York Jet, we'd probably digest that differently too. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah. You can't throw a pick six if you're Daniel Jones. I mean,
No, you can't.
come on, come on. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's just disaster waiting to happen here. Brian Dable is how hot is the seat that he's on right now with the Giants?
It's interesting, Dan. Like I think back to when Joe Judge got fired, and I remember talking to people in the weeks and even the months leading up to that, and when it started to look like Joe could be on shaky ground, um, the response I got was the Giants were really embarrassed by where they were as a franchise, and they didn't want to have the indignity of having had 3 coaches in a row go 2 and out, right? So Ben McAdoo 2 and out, Pat Shermer 2 and out, and then Joe Judge 2 and out. And things just got so bad at the end that they had to pull the plug on everything and start over again. And I know it was really embarrassing for the Maras, the Tishes, because they always view themselves as this gold standard franchise, like the East Coast version of Steelers, stability personified, right? Like all of that different stuff. And turning over coaches at that rate and getting it wrong at that rate and lacking an identity really got under their skin. And so I don't think that they want to start over, And I think even if there were some bumps this year, I think they still like the direction that Brian Daboll and Joe Shane have put them on. And so I personally think it would have to be really bad for those guys to be in trouble. I think that they like the foundation. They feel like they've started to fix the lines of scrimmage with guys like Andrew Thomas, Evan Neal on offense, and obviously, defensively, you look at some of the names there: Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns. And they always knew it was going to take time to rebuild, even if they did have that big breakthrough in year one.
Talking to Albert Breer, the Monday morning quarterback, joining us from Jets camp. The Vikings situation with JJ McCarthy.
Yep.
I keep reading that, he's going to need surgeries out for the year, but there was no one play where he may have injured himself.
Mm-hmm.
How does that happen?
It's a wear and tear injury. The meniscus, it's I hate to put it this way, but it's like maybe the type of injury that you and I would might suffer from jogging too much. Because
But is this a spillover from Michigan? Like they're
I mean,
you
I was actually curious about that. So I did dig into it a little bit, and I asked some teams that I knew really would have investigated JJ McCarthy and the idea of drafting him, and I asked if there were any red flags medically, after he went through the combine and everything else, and the answer I got back was no. Now, again, generally, this is a wear and tear injury. This isn't something where something pops, like a
okay?
Achilles pops, an ACL pops. It's not really like that. So, I mean, I think if there is a silver lining here, and to me, there are two. One, it's that by going in and repairing it, in all likelihood, it's not going to be a problem again, right? So if you trim, and if it was a less serious one, yes, you get them back this year, but there's always the potential that you're going to have to go in and do a repair at some point. The number two is sort of, and I think the Vikings were going to be disciplined about this anyway, but it sort of forces them to give them a redshirt year, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think any quarterback can benefit from that. Now JJ was ahead of schedule developmentally from where they thought he'd be, and he looked really good. Looked decisive, accurate, athletic, in that preseason opener against the Raiders. But I do, know that Kevin O'Connell and Wes Phillips and Josh McCown and the offensive staff there really feel like there's going to be a big benefit to JJ McCarthy and getting to sit and watch Sam Darnold go through a full NFL season, see the ups and downs, before, they hope becoming the starter in 2025.
What's the proper reaction to Caleb Williams and Bo Nix's performances this past weekend?
So I think it's fair to expect both those guys to be ahead of schedule for different reasons, right? So with Caleb, it's because they had the benefit, the Bears did, of having the number one overall pick and knowing that he was going to be their selection. I'd say they really knew at the combine, right? That Caleb Williams was going to be the guy. And so that allowed them creatively to start ramping him up. And I actually have a story going up on the site today about all of this and like what they did creatively to get him ready to go. They were installing the offense with him in March and April. So when they went out to USC for the pro day, when they had the 30 visit, when they brought him in and had the 3 1-hour Zooms that are allowed pre-draft, they were putting in formations, they were putting in terminology, they were putting in cadence. The 30 visit, they taught him, how to call a play in a huddle because that's something he hadn't had a lot of experience with. That allowed them to hit the ground running with him when he reported for rookie minicamp in May. And then when he went away for the 40 days between spring and summer, he took some big jumps because they worked with his personal quarterbacks coach to give him a program for that period of time. So by the time he got back, like I had one coach there told me it really looked like pro football, and that's a big thing for a rookie, especially one coming from the sorts of offenses that Caleb Williams has played in. So I think the Bears fans should be excited about what they saw because of the situation he's in, throwing to Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. And
the problem, they need to be less excited in Chicago. They're too excited, I think.
Yeah,
Albert.
that might be the
like
issue.
the expectation level is like, how far are we going in the playoffs?
Right.
How about we get to the
look,
playoffs?
they're in a tough division too. I mean, Detroit. Look, like who's the worst? I mean, is Minnesota going to finish last in that division? And Minnesota's a really good team. You know what I mean? Like Kevin O'Connell's done a fantastic job there. I mean, I think Green Bay's got a shot to make a real run at unseating Detroit. And I think Detroit's one of the 3 or 4 best teams in football, so it's going to be a tough road to hoe in that division. As for Denver and Bo Nix, I would be, this is going to sound, I don't want this to sound insulting. I would be alarmed if he didn't look good after 61 starts in college. He's supposed to look good, Like that's the benefit of taking a guy who got a historic amount of playing time in college is that he should look ready. He was a multi-year starter at 2 different schools. He went through the ups and downs. He played in different offenses. He should be as prepared as damn near any quarterback who's ever come out of college based on the amount that he played. And so, I think it's good that that it does look the way that it does, but that's sort of what we should expect. He's a good fit for Sean Payton's offense. And I think the one thing that's like a really obvious but notable, if you watch the Broncos preseason games, the offense moves when he's in there, and that's a simple thing, but it means it's an efficient operation when he's in there. And that's going to allow you to get buy-in from other players in the locker room. And so, like I would be less worried about where Bo Nix is in year 1 and year 2. What I'd be more concerned about is where he is in year 4 and year 5, where it's like, I have a lot of confidence he's going to be able to play at a competent NFL level fast. The question is when it comes time to pay a guy like that $50 or $60 million a year, is he going to be able to level up to the point where you're going to be, ready and happy about doing that? That's the part I think people are less sure about.
Speaking of money, Brandon Aiyuk's story seems to have calmed down. What's that mean to you?
Well, I mean, if it's quiet, I'd say that's good news for the Niners and good news for Aiyuk, right? Like, I think this really comes down, at least part of it, to the interpersonal relationships between Aiyuk and the Niners people. Things got pretty sideways there for a little bit, and I think part of it was, where the receiver market had gone, and where some of the other guys who got paid this offseason were, and so I think like the Niners had reached a point of frustration where they were like, all right, dude, like, well, if you think that if you think there's a place out there where you can match the money and our football situation, go find it. And we will reopen talks with other teams about doing a trade. And so he goes out and, New England offers him, I mean, two separate types of deals, both at over 30 million per, but he didn't want to go there because of the football situation. He liked the football situation better in Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh offered around, I think it was 27-7, which is not much more than the Niners offered. So there's a guy who's been like on the West Coast his entire life, grew up in California, went to school in Arizona, plays as pro in California. Does he want to uproot and move across the country for a worse football situation for just a little bit more money? So I think the Niners had reached a point of frustration with the handling of this, but they always loved him as a player. Kyle always wanted him as a player. And if you look at where they are right now, George Kittle's gotten older. Deebo Samuel's got mileage on his body. Christian McCaffrey's got mileage on his body. If you're going to pay Brock Purdy a year from now, well, who are you pairing him with for the next 5 years? Ayuk's the most logical answer. So I think, when this thing got a little bit messy, the reason the Niners allowed him to go talk to other teams was to try to, sort of break the stalemate and drive a conclusion, whether that was trading him away or keeping him on a long-term deal. And I think the hope was that they'd be able to bury the hatchet and get a long-term deal. And that could happen now. I think a lot of that is going to be dependent on whether or not Ayuk and the Niners can get themselves past some of the acrimony of the last few weeks. But I don't think the money part's as hard to figure out as maybe it was a couple weeks ago.
Play nice today with the Jets. Great to talk to you as always. Thank you.
Thanks for your help too on the interviewing stuff. I appreciate it.
I'm always here for you, Albert.
Thanks, TP.
Breer, if I'm a Niner fan, I feel pretty good because a couple of weeks ago, I probably didn't feel too good that you were going to lose Brandon Aiyuk. But it feels like maybe you hold on to him. Maybe it's a one-year deal. Maybe he still wants out. But it kind of felt like maybe there's a resolution there or the possibility.